I'm Tal, and this is Wordware. Guillaume came to me with a use case around analyzing pitch decks. Want to talk about it?
Precisely. So picture this. You've received a pitch deck from someone you don't know or you barely know, and you want to get a sense of whether it's interesting or not. You have no time to check it out. So ideally, you'd want to have a Word app that does it for you, analyzes whether it's worth your time. So that's what we're going to build today. Shall we dive right in?
Let's do it. Cool. So question for you. What would typically be the first thing you do when you look at a pitch deck?
I would look at four things: the team composition and strength, the idea, the business idea, the traction that the startup is experiencing, and lastly, the market opportunity overall.
Gotcha. So let's hop into Wordware. Let's jump into the flow. So this is a flow. This is simultaneously your documentation and your program. It's documentation because it's written like a Notion doc. You can read it, see the exact process that it's following as it goes step by step, executing top to bottom. And it's your program because this is what actually runs all the AI steps that you can do. So first thing that I'm going to do here is add an input. We'll call this pitch deck. You'll notice we have types down here, and I'm going to choose PDF. Now, at this point, I can reference this PDF using @ and then we can feed this into a model and do any number of different analysis steps. Good so far?
Yep.
Sweet. So you said first thing that you would do is dive into team composition.
Yeah.
What kinds of questions would you ask?
So I'd like to know how exceptional they are individually, be it in terms of personalities, but also what they've done in the past, where they've worked, where they've gone to school, what they've done. And then overall, do they have founder market fit? Are they uniquely positioned to solve for the problem they're trying to solve for?
Gotcha. All right. So I'm now thinking, how would I break this down in a way that the AI can handle it? So first step would probably be to extract the team members from the pitch deck. So let's do that first. So I'm just going to write here, extract the team members from the pitch deck, above, focus on founders and execs.
Right.
So,
are you doing this because you don't want, if there are more team members, you don't want it to dive into them?
Yeah. So the way that I'm thinking about this so far is we can make a list of team members and then do some sort of analysis on each one. If we did this on every single team member, first of all, this could be an arbitrarily large company. And it might not even be relevant either, right? So let's focus on the people who are most important.
Got it.
All right. So if I were to run this, nothing would happen, right? We've got prompt, but no AI. So let's add the AI in here. So you'll notice I just typed in, I'll do that again because I jumped through it super fast. So if I type in /, we have here access to a number of different tools, actions, features within the product. Now, these two pink ones up here are really where all the AI lives. So if I choose generation, we can now talk to one of 80 different models. And by the time we release this, it'll probably be much more. Each of these has different capabilities. So we default to GPT-4o, really good general powerhouse model. It can process PDFs. It can see images. So we'll start here, and then we can tweak this over time if we find that we can better take advantage of different models' capabilities. So at this point, really, I have everything I need to get started on this. So if we want to upload a pitch deck, let's use this one. We've got the file uploaded, and let's start the process. So right now, GPT-4o is reading through the pitch deck and looking through trying to find the information that we ask for. Now, I didn't really give it any particular structure I asked for. I just said, give me the team members. My guess, based on experience with this model, is it's probably going to give us a bulleted list. Cool. Classic Airbnb founders. What would be the next thing that you would typically do?
So now, I've got their names and what they focus on. Really, I'd like to scrape the entire internet to get a sense of how phenomenal they are. The deck might not have all that information. I want to get a sense of, okay, is Joe or Brian, are they exceptional in certain ways? Have they been, Olympic athletes or IOI medalists, something like that? And what have they worked on before? Have they worked at great companies or have they gone to great schools? Those things.
Cool. So what I could do here is just ask it, tell me, let's say deep dive into these founders. How exceptional are they? How exceptional are they? How about their education, prior experience, etc. And now I can do another generation. Now I'm going to run this, but what I'm guessing that it's going to do is it's going to get a little bit confused, especially with really long lists, because it needs to remember to do individualized research on each person in here. Now, by default, first of all, we're just asking this model based on its internal information. So all it's going to give us is the information that it's got memorized. We can improve this by swapping out this model with one that has internet access. So if I click over here, browse 80 models, I can filter by online mode, and then all of these models can do web searches as part of their process. So I'm going to choose Gemini 2.0 Pro Online, pretty good model out of the Google team. And you can imagine that Google knows a thing or two about web searches. And then it can go online and try to find us information from the internet about these folks. So I'm going to run this again. We'll see what we get now. But I'm expecting that we're still going to have that issue of it not digging deeply enough into each individual member. Because right now we're just kind of letting it go wild and choose how to structure its web searches. What I really want to do here is get it to a place where it is putting individualized time into every person on this list. So we'll see if we actually end up getting these results out the way I expected. And if we do, then there's a trick that we can take advantage of to make sure that we can focus some time on every single person in that list. Cool. All right, let's see what it came up with. So deep dive on the founders. So Joe, education, prior experience, exceptionalism, brought crucial design thinking to the team, background in both graphic and industrial design made him well suited for shaping the user interface. All right, cool. So it looks like it's actually giving enough attention to each person here. So we might skip the next step, right? What is the next thing that you would typically do?
Now I want to get a sense for founder market fits. So maybe it's just one line from the AI telling me, yes, these guys are uniquely positioned to solve this because of X, Y, Z. I just want to get a sense for that.
Cool. So let's see if we can rate founder market fit for each of these founders.
Okay.
So there are going to be two steps here. First of all, I want to go through the list of founders, and we'll go into our second feature here, which is a loop. So with a loop, I can plug in some lists that I generate, except we notice that we don't yet have a list, right? And so our third feature here is going to be what we call structure generation. And this is really one of the more powerful ways of taking advantage of AI, because instead of just saying, give me this information, and then it gives me plop some text on the page, I can give it an exact structure that I want. In this case, what I really want is information on a founder by founder basis. Right? So I'm going to do two things. First of all, I'm going to extract the list of founders that we have here. So I'll say structure generation, and then I will call this team members. So you'll notice we have these different field types. So text, number, true, false. We can choose what we want it to give us for each of these. Now, what I really want is a list of founder names. So a list of text, right? And if I get rid of this one, I'll call this team members. And then this is really in place of this team members generation. So I can drag this up here and then get rid of this one. And then now, if I go into this loop, we can see under variables, we now have team members, and we can do something with each one of these team members. And I'm actually going to do what we were talking about earlier and do a deep dive into each individual founder. So now what I want to do is, first of all, I want to get the founder's name out so that we can focus some time on each one. So I will say, start with, let's try structuring this around each individual founder. I'll say first, or do some research on, and now if I do item, then I can see the name from that team members, right? And in fact, I can make this even more clear by renaming this loop into team loop, right? And now within this loop, we can research each team member.
Super cool.
So I'll get rid of this, and then we'll walk through what we've got so far.
One question around this. So the research is phenomenal, but I want to make sure that the models look into their socials as well. Can we add that? I want the AI to look into the deck and information there, but also to look on the internet. So LinkedIn profiles, x.com profiles, websites, any place where these founders would be referenced. Is that possible?
Yeah, so there are three ways of doing this. So the first is we already showed that we have online models. So if I hit generation here and then choose any of these models with this online filter up here, so any of these will be able to access information on the internet. Now, sometimes that's not quite enough, especially if you want to get information from sources that don't just sort of publicly leave their information up there for anyone to access. So in that case, we could go into options 2 and 3. First up is our actions feature. So within actions, I can plug in let's say I could say like, LinkedIn, and we could access information from LinkedIn. I could
Super
say,
cool. This is
if I just do
phenomenal.
socials, we can start getting at, like scraping bot. There are a whole bunch of different ways of getting information on these folks.
Very cool.
And then final option that we have here is using a tool called Exa Search. So if I do / and then Exa, so Exa is a search engine that is designed for use not by people like you and me, but by the AI itself.
Right.
So I can feed into this a query. It can be, traditional Google style like keywords, or I can ask it a specific question, and it's intelligent enough to go through, find individual sources. It's kind of like doing a online mode search, like we were doing, with the online models, except it gives us the results so we can choose what to do with them.
Okay.
Cool.
This is pretty important because ultimately, when you're looking at just a deck, you have a bit of information. If you were to look at it yourself, you would, of course, go check out the founders' LinkedIn's and you check out their website, the company's website, and so on and so forth. I want the AI to do this for me.
Cool. So let's get rid of some of these steps and we'll go through what we've got so far. So up here at the top, we've got our pitch deck. This is just making sure that the model can see it. I could move this around, put it at a different point in the process, but really we want this from step 1. So next we've got a little bit of prompt. We're asking the model to extract the team members from the deck and put them into this structure over here. So this is our third step, which is our structure generation. And I can even call this extract team members. Extract team members. And this is giving us a list of text elements, one for each team member. Then our next step is we're asking the model to do a deep dive, and we're looping over the team members and saying, do some research on this person. Focus on education, experience, and founder market fit for the company in the pitch deck above. And then I want to make sure that we've got an online model here. So I'm going to swap this out for, again, let's do Gemini 2.0 Pro Online. I'll rename this generation to do, let's say, like founder research. And then finally, I want to visually give ourselves some differentiation between what we get. So it's going to loop through each one of these founders, and I want to give a little bit of spacing here. This is really just to keep things organized for us, but it's also useful for the model to know the lines between its individual steps. So if I do triple dash, then we get this thin little line over here, and we'll see this in the output as well. So let's run it and see what we've got so far. So again, it's going to go through the pitch deck. This thing runs from top to bottom. And so it is currently analyzing the deck so that it can extract the members into this object over here. And in case this isn't clear, by the way, so this on the left is really, you can think of this as the blueprint for the process it's going to follow. And on the right is when it actually fills in that blueprint with the information that's extracted. So this extract team members here on the left is the blueprint for this object. And on the right is the results for this object. And that's how it always works when you're executing one of these flows. So now you'll notice down here that we're going founder by founder and saying, do some research on Joe, right? Focus on education, experience, and founder market fit, and so on. And so we can see that the model is, let me see. Interesting. So right now it's going through all the team members. So we want to make sure that it's only focusing time on each individual person within this list. So there are two things that I'm going to do to make sure that the model understands what we're trying to get from it. So first of all, I'm going to add another one of these spacers. Now I'm going to add a section heading. Now, there's a neat trick here with formatting, where if I add hashtags, we can get headings of different sizes. So let's start by saying research, let's say team member by team member. And now we're going to do our team loop. So first, I'm going to add another heading and have just each individual person listed. First of all, this is going to make it easier for us to read. Second of all, it's going to make it easier for the model to understand what we want.
Right.
And this, by the way, is a classic thing when you're dealing with these models, is oftentimes you'll find that they can, if you don't specify super clearly what you want them to do, they'll go off and make assumptions. This is just a fundamental attribute of how it is working with AI. And so one of the things that Wordware makes it super easy to do is structure your process in a way that the model can understand exactly what you want for it, as opposed to getting confused. So you'll notice down here, now we've got this section heading, research team member by team member. And then first, we've got Joe in his own section up here. And by doing this, we're dramatically increasing the likelihood that the model is not going to get confused and start doing its own thing, and is instead going to stick to exactly what we want. So you can see it's saying, okay, let's delve into Joe's background. And now it's going through and giving us information about him.
This is pretty phenomenal. This is kind of work it would have taken me maybe, I don't know, an entire day to do. And there's just
Or
no
hired an
way.
intern.
Or hire an intern. And there's just no way I'm going to do either of those things. So just being able to get all of that is incredible.
Absolutely. So what would be the next step? And we can keep this running, it can do its research in the background. What would be the next step that you'd want to research after you're done with team members?
Yeah, so now we've got a good sense of who the team is, who these people are. Now I want to dive deeper into the idea itself and traction. I think understanding the business idea is pretty simple. I just want the AI to tell me, hey, here's what they're building. Here's a summary. I don't want it to deep dive into it. That's my job for later. What I do want to know, however, is traction. This is an opportunity that came to me. I don't know the founders, or I know them just a little, and therefore I want to make sure that they didn't come to me they want to come to me to accelerate their growth, as opposed to getting the funding to create said growth. So I want to make sure they have some traction, be it in terms of commercials, product, and let's say funding as well. I just want to know how much they've raised already.
Yeah, makes sense. So at this point, we've essentially turned this flow into a team research flow. So I'm going to give this the name team research. And for the next step of the process, as we're analyzing the business, I'm going to do this separately in here. We're going to call this business. I'm going to add the same input. And then also call it a PDF. So just like in the other one, which we can see if we jump over here, we start out with our pitch deck, except instead of extracting the team members, I want it to start by extracting, let's say, what the business does. So I'm going to say, analyze the pitch deck above. Tell me what they do, or what this company does. Structure generation. This is going to be describe company. Yeah, describe company, sure. And then let's have over here a section for the problem so we can see what problem they're solving. We can see solution. And then let's try traction. Now, traction, I wouldn't want to trust the pitch deck for. I'd want to do this as an online search. So we'll just skip ahead and add this as an online search. Now let's dive into their traction. And again, slash generation, we're starting to see some patterns here. I'm going to choose, let's go again. Let's choose a different model this time. We can use GPT-4o search, which is a new online mode model from OpenAI. And we'll rename this generation to traction. Let's run this. Pass in the same pitch deck.
Nice.
And see our process. So again, the structure generation is now going to be analyzing the deck, giving the information about the companies, what they do, what problem they're solving, what solution they have. And then we're switching to an online mode for traction so that we can make sure that we're not relying on, you can put anything in a deck, but once you can start to do some online research, that's when you can really validate the information that you're using.
Got it.
And while we're waiting for this to finish, I can rename the structure generation for the next run to, let's call this company, just so that we have a easier way of labeling all the pieces that we're doing. So describe company. The company, Air Bed and Breakfast, offers a web platform that allows users to book rooms with local hosts instead of staying in hotels. Sounds good? Problem, travelers often find hotel prices high and feel disconnected from the local culture. There's no way for travelers to book a room with local hosts or for locals to become hosts. That seems fair enough to me. And then diving into traction.
I don't know, man. I don't think this idea has legs.
Airbnb, yeah, definitely going to fail. Cool. What would you do next?
All right, so now we've got an understanding of the team, we've got an understanding of their traction and the business idea. Can we do a quick market search, just competition, so on and so forth? That'd be interesting to know.
Oh, interesting. All right, so let's put that down here. We've already extracted the company, problem, and solution. So the model can use its previous outputs to inform the next step of its research.
Right.
So now we want to look into whether it can find competitors to this company. So I'm going to say find competitors to the company above.
Also, I'd love to know how late stage they are, because that's just interesting for me to make my own mind about this idea.
Cool. So I'm going to add two steps. One is we're going to do another one of these web searches. In fact, let's even add an additional step here. So I'm going to use our Exa tool so that we can do some web search with Exa. And I'm going to say query is going to be, let's plug in the company name.
One thing I'd like to know as well is if I don't know this market, and that's true for most markets, I want to know what are the main considerations to keep in mind, main risks or opportunities in these markets. I want it to do a market search for me, the kind of work that a VC analyst would do to give me a sense of what to keep in mind.
Search query. Yes. So let's plug this into the Exa search, and then we'll start doing some specific market analysis, like getting a better understanding of what the market looks like. So I'm actually going to have it construct two different queries for me here. So generate a search query to find competitors for this company, and now I'm going to say generate a search query to analyze the market this company is in. And then I will pass in, so both of these are going to be structured generations, just so that we can make sure that we're getting the exact field that we want. And so it won't say like, oh, sure, here you go. Let's call this one, so this will be search query. This will be competitor search query. And then this one will be market search query. And in just a sec, we'll go through all the steps so we can see what we've gotten so far. So I'll pass in the competitor search query here. We want the full page text. Let's say that we want 10 results per company. Result category is going to be company, because we specifically want to find companies that are competitors. And then down here, now we want to do, let's say, market. Yeah, so I'll do another Exa search. We'll pass in our market search query. Now results, I mean, really, it's just everything. I just want to find everything that I can to try to get a better understanding here.
Okay.
Cool. So let's run this and see what we've got so far. So again, so this time, instead of hitting the button, I'm going to hit, we have keyboard shortcuts for this, because usually the process, as you can see, is you make a tweak, you hit run, you make a tweak, you hit run. People who can move super fast can hit run twice a minute. So I'm going to hit Command R or Control R on Windows so that we can test this out and see what we've got so far. So again, we're going to go through the pitch deck. It's analyzing the deck and pulling out first the description of the company, then an analysis on the problem, and then the solution. It's going to give us probably something pretty similar to what we got last time. Then below that, we're diving into their traction, doing a web search to find information that we can about this company, so we can see, like how far they've gotten so far, if they seem to be doing well. I hear Airbnb as a customer or two.
So again, this is pretty phenomenal because I get a deck by email. I'm probably not going to have time to look into it. And if I do, I'll spend 10 seconds on it, which means that I'll be relying on my human shortcuts, the biases that I use to navigate live, to make a decision for me, which is not very useful. This, on the other hand, can do the work in a few minutes for me to really get a good grasp, a good understanding of what the opportunity is.
Yeah. So we can see at this point, we've gotten down to our part where we're generating our search queries. So let's see what our search query was that it gave us for, oh, interesting. So it went super deep.
Wow. This is super cool.
All right. Wow. You can see that it gave us a lot of information over
This
here.
is incredible, but I'm definitely going to want to summarize this with insights later on. But I mean, this is the kind of research I would expect an intern to do, and they would never do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it looks like we've got
That's incredible.
Huge amounts of web information. All right. So let's do this.
Looking at, current trends as well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's finish off this step by doing a structured generation to kind of summarize the information that we got on, you know what? Let's go summarize the competitors and then summarize the market. So I'm going to make a new section here called summary. Let's do, yeah. So summarize the information above about the competitor landscape and the market. And now I'll do a generation, and I want to, so this is where the choice of model ends up being super important. So if I hover over some of these, you'll notice that it's quite common for these models to have 200,000 token context windows, 128,000 token context windows, where a token is roughly 3 to 4 characters usually. We've now pulled in so much of this information from the internet that if we did it that way, there's a pretty decent chance that we'd end up passing the context window of some of the models with smaller contexts. So I'm going to specifically choose a model that is known for having higher context. We'll stick with the Gemini series. This time, let's do Gemini 2.5 Pro. So this is a model that Google announced maybe a week ago. Very, very new. It seems to be really, really good at some of the reasoning steps. So I'm going to call this final summary. And then we'll run it and see what we get.
Very cool.
So again, one more time, we're digging through the pitch deck. We're extracting these fields up here, diving into their traction, diving into their competitors, diving into their market. Here we're constructing search queries for the competitor and market. Here we're actually doing the searches for competitor and market. And then here we've got this summary. In fact, we can even drag some of these things around to keep the structure a little bit easier to understand. So first, let's call this the traction section. Traction, and then now we're going to have the competitor section. Oops. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And then, so this is our competitor search. I'm just going to drag this up here. And then down here, we're going to now add our market section. Now we're doing the same thing for market. And then finally, our summary section, where we're giving ourselves a final summary.
Excellent.
So we can see at this point, it spent quite a lot of time doing web search, finding a whole bunch of information for us. Now let's dive all the way down to the bottom where it's summarizing it. And you can see that it's going to take a few seconds because the model has to look through I'd have to guess this is like on the order of hundreds of thousands of tokens of information that we've just pulled in from the internet. So looks like we're now, let's see, here's the summary presented itself as a web platform allowing users to book rooms with local hosts as an alternative to traditional hotels. Competitor landscape. These are, looks like the model had the sense of dividing into categories between affordable offline, affordable online, expensive offline, expensive online. It's also possible it was inspired by the content of this deck as it was choosing the categories. Now we're looking at, again, this company has been through a bit over the past few years since this deck was put together. So it's now given us more recent information on, competitors today, like, Vrbo, Booking.com, Expedia's products, and so on. It's giving us information about the market. And then finally, where we've gotten since then.
That's awesome. Great. So can we reference all of that back and get a, sense of whether this opportunity is worth pursuing?
Absolutely. So let's take our team research section. I'll add a summary to the very bottom, and we'll do exactly the same thing. So now I'm going to have, this will be called summary, summarize results from above. We'll just do exactly the same thing that we did in the other one. We'll choose Gemini 2.5 Pro. And then I won't even bother testing this because I'm pretty confident it's going to do exactly what we wanted to do. And this will just be called, main research.
Okay. So now what I would love is a sort of guidance from this app of whether this is worth my attention, whether I should actually look at the pitch deck, remember that I've not looked at it so far, and perhaps get on a call with the founders. So if I could get that information, that would be great.
Cool. So first up top, we're going to pass in research from these two subcategories of research, right? So business at the bottom, we have, I'll call this business summary. From team, we'll have team summary. And then jumping into main research. So I'm going to run each of these two steps. So if I do slash, and we're going to jump into our next feature over here, /flow, I can call into these other flows and do these parts of our research. So I'm going to choose our team research flow. And then down here, I'm going to do it again and choose our business flow. Yes. So you'll notice that we have to pass in the pitch deck. We want to make sure that it has access to the right information. So I'm just going to wire that up like this. So what I'm doing here is these are the inputs. You'll know these other flows have inputs that are required. We want to make sure that they have access to the input from the main flow. So if I click this variables button and then choose pitch deck, we're now passing in this pitch deck into these subflows. And then finally out here, I can say, we want to access, so we had 2 summaries. We had team summary and business summary. So I'm just going to say over here, team summary, so we can get the results without having to focus too much on the process under the hood for each of these 2. And we're going to have business summary. I'll do business summary. And then finally, let's call this final analysis. So you said you wanted to know if this was a good opportunity, if it's worth contacting them.
A recommendation, yeah.
Yeah. Based on the information above, do you think this company is an opportunity worth pursuing?
And so now I want to give it a bit of guidance because I don't know how the AI is going to think about this opportunity. So I wanted to put some emphasis on the team itself. That's ultimately a true determinant of whether business has legs. Is the team quite phenomenal, and does it have founder market fit? Those 2 things I wanted to really, really focus on. The business summary is important, but it's also to just give me context or to have context. Can we push that?
Absolutely. So I'm going to do 2 things to get that flavor in here. So thing 1 is assigning the AI a role. Okay. This is a really, really neat trick for allowing it to do, I guess, fit in within the pattern of behavior that you're expecting. So I'm going to start by saying you are an analyst, for an investment firm focused on companies like the one above. The thesis for this firm puts emphasis on, so you mentioned team as being particularly important.
Team and individuals in a team. So the holistic view of the team and the individual founders and how incredible they are. So what we're doing here really is giving the AI taste. It's teaching it how to think like I do, and for your purposes, you could very much change those inputs to pass on your own taste.
Absolutely. Anything else that you would put in the thesis, or are we just sticking with team?
Can we make a distinction between the team itself and then the individuals within the team? So I guess how incredible they are. So yeah, we could just split that into 2 bullet points, perhaps.
So holistic view, let's say fit, etc. And then I will now say individual team members. So this is going to be our individual founders, how incredible they are, independent of the company idea.
Perfect.
So based on the information above, do you think this company is an opportunity worth pursuing? I might even tell it, think carefully and explain your thought process. So this is exactly the kind of task for which a reasoning model might be really useful. So we have a whole bunch of reasoning models supported here. So I might choose, O1 is sort of the classic here. We can choose O1, but the disadvantage is we can't actually see the reasoning process. I might choose DeepSeek R1. The advantage with DeepSeek is we can actually see its reasoning as it thinks through the process. So it's going to give us these little sort of think sections that we can look through and understand how it's thinking through the problem.
Love it.
And then a result. So I will call this final analysis, and then we can run it. Now, this particular step is going to take a few minutes because it's repeating all the research that's being done on each of the founders and the company and the market and so on. So we can dive into each of these subflows and understand the process that it's using. So if I click into team research, so first of all, we are extracting the team members from the PDF. Then down here, we're researching each member one by one. And remember, this is the process that we defined over in here. If we want, we can look at how our run is doing by clicking this little 1 in the blue dot over here, which shows us all of our previous runs, and then selecting the one that's currently going. So we jump into team research, and we can see that it's researching Joe. Cool. So it looks like we've got information on Joe so far. Much of the same research that was being done already. Now it's researching Brian.
So this is well and good, but it's taking a little while. If I launch this search on a day-to-day basis, I'm probably going to want to do something else. I want to fire and forget while this is working for me, is there a way that I could be told at the very end, okay, I've done my analysis, here's my recommendation, and here are the action points. For example, I'm on Slack quite a lot. Could I get an update from the platform telling me, hey, this is an opportunity worth pursuing? I get a Slack message, and then we take it from there.
Absolutely. So if you are on Slack, notice that we have, and I'll jump into a new flow. If I do / and then actions, so this is one of my favorite features in Wordware, is we can see all the different actions that we have available. We have integrations with over 2,000 third parties, of which Slack is right up here at the top. So let's say that I wanted to send a message, right? So send a message. We can even build this out and test it while the other flow is still running. So I'm going to choose Guillaume. Channel type. Where would you want this to be sent? Maybe DM to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. And then let's filter it by you. And then just as an example, let's call this test Slack message. Cool. So let's actually have, do you have your phone on you?
Yeah, I do.
Cool. Do you want to, I'm going to run this test. You should get something basic. I'm just going to say test Slack message. If I run this test, give that a sec.
Yep, there we go. Just got a
Sweet.
message.
All right, so I'm going to call this send Slack message. Send Slack message. I want the message that we're going to be passing in here as an input. So we can just call this from the other flow and keep this nice and simple. So let's call this message. It's just going to be text. And then I'm going to pop this as the input over here. So message.
Great.
And then we'll run one more test just to make sure that it can mark this as done. We'll call this test 2 and then run this. And then you should see the status here switches from setup to ready. Beautiful. All right.
One more thing. I mean, this is all well and good for me to get a message, hey, I've done the analysis. But if it's a yes, I should investigate. I'd love to also get an email from the app with a summary of that research that we're just about to do. And perhaps the email of the founder, so that I can just send them a message and say, hey, let's chat.
Yeah. So at the very end of the process here, let's have this additional step. I'll call this now write an email to me. And I'll call it Guillaume, describing this opportunity with some information about the founder. So did you want them to be looped in as well? Like, was this just to you or was this to you and them?
Just to me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Describing this opportunity with some information about the founders, company, and opportunity. So let's do, so we're going to need, let's say a subject line and then a body.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so I'll do one more structure generation. I'm going to call this email. We want 2 text items. One is going to be the subject line. Then 2 is going to be the body.
So the beauty of this is it's very, very flexible to one's own workflow or ways of working. So for me, I'd like to get an update on Slack because I can see it immediately, but I don't want to do the research on Slack.
Yeah.
Slack is for communication. I don't want to get the summary there. I want to get it by email because then I can just jump into an email and send an email to the founder if I'm interested. But you might have a different way of working. And so you could very much leverage the app as is and use it for your own purposes if you work like me, or make some edits and change that. Instead, get all the research on Slack or something else. Notion, perhaps. We have thousands of integrations. The world is your oyster, or rather, Wordware is your oyster.
Absolutely. And there is one more thing that we can do here. So I would assume that you generally get these pitch decks over email, correct?
Correct.
All right. So in the interest of time, I won't integrate this into the whole process, and then we'd have to actually send a pitch deck. But so you'll notice here we have this triggers feature. We can look into that next time if you like. So if I select Gmail as a trigger, and then new email received,
Perfect.
you notice that I can choose you. Let's say have it check my email, even once every 5 minutes if we like. create this trigger. So what we can do here is have it do something for every single new email that you receive. And then we could set this up so that this is actually running in the background 24/7. Every new email you receive, it looks at that email, tries to see, hey, is this someone sending me a pitch deck? If it is, then we can, run this process. And if not, then it just, skips at that point.
So the beauty of all of this here is I can just automate this entire workflow end to end. An email is being sent to me with a pitch deck. I don't even need to look into it. It'll be analyzed directly by the app. And if it's interesting, I'm then being told to investigate further. If it isn't, which is most of the time, then fire and forget, which is the beauty of it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Cool. So let's call this trigger on email, and we'll just leave this out for now. So our final step here is we're going to go back into our main research. So we now had it write me an email. Final thing is I want it to send me that email and then send me, a Slack message. Also write me a Slack message about this opportunity.
Short and sweet.
Keep it short and sweet, nice and condensed. And see, this is one of the things I love about working with these models is you can be so sort of casual about it. Right now, you'll notice I'm being careful with my spelling. Usually I throw these together. I just don't even bother correcting my spelling because it'll figure things out. So I'm going to do one more structure generation. We're going to call this Slack message. All right, and then final step here. So I want to make sure that I'm sending the Slack message, and I also want to be able to send the email. So we already have this Slack message flow. I can duplicate this and make another one that does the same thing for email. So I'll call this send email. We're going to swap out this Slack message action with an email action. So let's choose Gmail, send email, send it from you to yourself. I'll just add in your own email. And then, of course, if you wanted to make this dynamic, let's say a different person at your firm is optimized for every, you can have the model decide who's the best fit at your firm to look into this, send it to the right partner and so on.
Incredible.
All right. So this is going to be called new opportunity. That's not too attention grabby, is it? All right. And then email body is just going to be this message that we passed in. All right, so let's run the test just to make sure that we can get this to work. I'm going to say this is just going to be test message. All right, and let's send it.
There we go. I just got it.
Sweet. So final step is let's send these as part of the main process. So jump into main research. We've done all of these research steps. We've looked into the team, we've looked into the business, we've summarized it. We've used DeepSeek to give us an analysis on the result. We've generated an email and a Slack message. I'm just going to call this Slack. And then finally at the bottom, let's send these out. So I'll use this flow feature again. We'll reference our send email and send Slack message flows. So I can choose over here, send email as the first one. We'll choose send Slack message as the second one. Slack message is going to be the Slack message that we generated. And then it looks like for email, we've got subject line and body. So I do want to make sure that we're sending both the subject and the body. So I'll rename this to subject, and then I'll rename message to body. And then we just want to make sure that we're passing this incorrectly. So if I go back into setup, so subject is, we can use, and then body is body. We'll run one more test. You should be able to see that. Test 2, and then test email from Wordware. I'm going to run this.
There we go.
Perfect. And then back in our main research flow, we can make sure that we're passing these in. So send email, we want to send the subject line and then the body. And then for send Slack message, we want to send the Slack message that we generated. And now we can just run the thing end to end.
All right, let's do it. So again, picture this. You just got a deck and there's pretty much nothing for you to do. If the whole thing runs end to end, finds the deck, analyzes the deck, looks at team composition and how exceptional the founders are, looks at the market opportunity, the business idea, any traction that the company might have. And then it determines, okay, this is an opportunity that's worthwhile or not. If it is, it will send me a Slack message saying, hey, buddy, look into this. And it'll send me an email with a summary. And that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's starting now.
It's starting now. And again, we can trigger this on email, right? So right now we're passing in the pitch deck. We could wire this up so that every time you get a new email, it asks, is this, a pitch deck? Is this someone who I might be interested in? If so, it does this analysis. If not, we've got customers who've hooked up dozens of different email categories so that anytime they get an email, if it's, let's say, spam or something like that, it'll just delete it straight out and then they don't have to see it. If it's, a family member, it might send them a text so they know to respond fast. Granted, I don't get texts from my mom, but I don't get emails from my mom. I would hope she sends me a text every now and then. But you can set up all these automations around how to process these. And then this would just be one use case.
It took us less than an hour to build it. But the thing is, you don't need to build it yourself. You can just use this entire template, replicate it, and use it for yourself, for your own purposes. If you want to change any of it, it's also very, very simple. You saw Tal just doing it right now. It's very intuitive and it's very, very flexible. So this is, again, research I would have never done. And I'm going to be able to make an informed decision and a pretty quick decision in terms of whether I should invest in Airbnb when it was just getting started. Actually, it's going to be interesting. It might
I really wonder what it's going to say.
It might actually come out and say, this is a stupid idea. Just like most people said back in the days.
Yeah.
And it turns out most people were wrong. So
Well, yeah, but then the cool bit here is, keep in mind, we've described exactly how we want this analysis to be done, right? We told the AI the process it should follow. So let's say that we find that it actually would have missed Airbnb. We can tweak the process, tell it, instead of focusing on this thesis, we can give it alternative thesis. We could go in and modify the research process. We can change whatever we have to do to make sure that we're getting the results that we expect. And in fact, the cool thing here is you could set up bath tests against pitch decks for all these companies that worked out and all these companies that didn't. Tweak the prompt until it gets it right, and then say, okay, now I've essentially created an investor who always makes the right decision.
So what you're saying is you can work out whether you're a good or a bad investor by just running this thing.
Absolutely. And then you can automate your process and make it run in the background. So let's see what we got. Cool. So final analysis. Remember down here, we use DeepSeek to do our final analysis, and it lets us see its thought process. So it's a little bit subtle. We might change the formatting of this at some point, but in between these think tags, we can see the way that the model is thinking through the analysis, right? And it gives us a few paragraphs of its understanding. And if we wanted to, let's say we saw that it was following a process that's different from what you or I might follow, we could alter that just by describing a different way of doing the process. So down here, investment recommendation. Based on the firm's emphasis on team composition and individual founder exceptionalism, Airbnb's founding team presents a compelling opportunity worthy of investment. Here's the rationale. And it describes team composition, near perfect complementarity. Wow, that's solid. That's solid. Individual founders, elite talent with pre-validation. It walks through each one. Joe's design pedigree, Brian's visionary leadership, and then Nathan on the technical side. We've got counter arguments and risks mitigated by team strength. You can see that it noticed right away that suggesting that people sleep on each other's couches is a bit of an unvalidated concept. And so it says here that the composition of the team will actually sort of counter this lack of validation. Execution risk, competition risk, final conclusion, and it gives us a set of reasons and then says, while later stage competition and regulatory challenges are inevitable, the team's early stage composition suggests a high likelihood of navigating these hurdles. Given the firm's thesis, investing in this team's ability to execute any large vision, not just Airbnb, would be justified. Their individual brilliance and collective synergy make this a strong yes.
This is incredible.
Yes. Verdict, pursue aggressively. I love this.
Let's go. Okay, so let's see. Now it should be sending me a Slack message. And yes, there we go. Hey, Guillaume, rocket emoji. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about the fantastic investment opportunity with Airbnb. Founding team, Joe Gebbia, Brian Chesky, yada, 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 has an impressive blend of design, business, and tech skills, making them a powerhouse trio. They've successfully transformed Airbnb, blah, 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 blah. This aligns perfectly with our investment strategy. Let's chat more about this when you have a moment. Great. Actually, this is great because it's actually given me a sort of template for me to send an email afterwards. And now let's go to my emails because it's probably given me yes, there we go. There's an email from myself to myself. Yay. Investment opportunity, Airbnb, founding team analysis. It's pretty incredible. I hope this message finds you well. Yada, yada, yada. Company overview, founding team, opportunity, market position. This is great. And now what I would do immediately is I would go and message Brian and say, hey, Mate, let me in.
Let me in. Preferably at, like 2010 pricing, maybe.
Oh, please, 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 pretty please. This is remarkable. So again, this was what? I didn't do any work. I don't have to do any work, and it's analyzing it all for me. It's pretty
Yeah, and once the process is described within the Word app, we could just keep running. We could run this through 10,000 pitch decks right now. It might take a few minutes, but we could see its results on all of them. We can tweak how it would do the analysis, rerun it on all the decks. We've got a customer we're working with right now in a fairly similar use case, doing some essentially analyzing different companies and trying to see whether it aligns with their thesis.
Brilliant.
And the beautiful thing here is right now they're doing this process manually. They actually have people at the company who are just spending hours and hours and hours going through these decks, researching these companies, doing all these steps. Not only were we able to get this to run in under 5 minutes, but now this is going to run for 5 minutes without having to do anything other than get it started. Or if I hook this up to my email, not even do that, right? It'll see the pitch decks as I receive them. It'll analyze the company, only send me information on the compelling ones. This entire process is automated. We're going to put in these flows in the description so you can check these out, understand how they work. You can copy them, make your own copy, and if you end up finding any really interesting opportunities, and
send them our way.
Send them our way. All right, take it easy now. Bye.